Today is Wednesday, May the 6th, and we did see some interesting things happen. We were really looking at the McClellan oscillator yesterday, and we needed to have fewer than about 400 decliners over advancers to remain where we were. Otherwise, we could go down and hit the zero line. Well, we hit the zero line. But I want to point out something else. If you take a look in the comments, I guess many of you don't look at the comments, but Cheyenne Patel asked me to look at Wayfair, and I'm going to do that at the end. And I think it's worth sticking around for because it looks like a pretty good opportunity. But the market dropped at the open, moved up, and then wasn't able to sustain that. Now, I don't know what was in the news that said that. You know, I really just look at the charts, not so much the news. I know that there's some concern about reopening maybe too soon in Texas and in Georgia. That might have spooked the investors a little bit. Microsoft and Apple, Amazon and Facebook. So your big guys were green. Healthcare was red, interestingly enough. Decliners led advancers, which pushed our McClellan oscillator right down to the zero line. This is the first time now that we've had a negative McClellan oscillator reading since this point right here, which is April the 10th, but it was actually April the 3rd. Oh, sorry, it was down here, of course. That's when we last had our last negative reading down here, April the 3rd. So we've gone quite a while now with it positive. Similar to what we saw back here at the beginning of 2019, where we spent roughly a month there as well above the zero line, maybe a month and a half above the zero line, then we came down. But overall, the market continued to move up. If we go back and we look a little back further in time, if we look back at 2007, we never had the high McClellan oscillator readings like we've seen this time around and in 2019. You go back in 2007, we had no readings that were over 300, just two of them. So that's not telling us too much, but now let's look at the chart. And well, first of all, let's look at volume. So overall, the volume was, the stack volume was a little bit less than yesterday, a little bit higher than on Monday, with the decliner dollars way outpacing the advancing dollars. So this is the lowest up dollars that we've seen, with the exception of one day for almost 3 weeks. And the summation index actually took a little bit of a break as well. The summation index actually turned a little bit down from 1269 to 1259. So the summation is starting to move down. Another indication that some cycling in the next 3 months is likely going to happen, but we already knew that. Let's take a look at the charts now, because that's what's important. We said yesterday we were going to look for it to hit the top of this range. Yesterday, the highest of the day was the Chiku span on this 50 EMA. And today, that was exactly the same story. What happened there? If you look at this point right here and take it back to the 50, to today's position of the Chiku span, we again were blocked by the 50 EMA on the Chiku span. Could we go back down and test the cloud again? Absolutely. The cloud is starting to revert. Remember, it's inverted here, where the Senku span A is now the bottom of the cloud. So the cloud is flipped, and the cloud is going to flip back into the other direction about 23 days from now. Let's see, Apple, the Chiku span is what we're watching for, with its resistance being the top of the cloud, somewhere up here around 306. We hit the magic 78.6%. This is going to be a tough area to breach, because once we do, there's usually no coming back other than for a test. So we're on our way with Apple to 314, which would be the completion of this bat pattern. And the volume has been consistently below average, but nonetheless, that's encouraging for Apple. So Apple's been a great stock. Home Depot has been equally good. Where did we see our high of the day? exactly the same place that we did yesterday, which means that the Chiku span again was rejected by the top of the cloud. So that's now 2 days in a row. Let's put 2 arrows in there. So we have 2 days in a row now where the top of the cloud has stopped price from rising any higher. It's still a great stock to be holding on to. NVIDIA was looking really good over 300 earlier in the day, finished a little bit down, but up overall for the day. NVIDIA is still a great stock, but I'm still only in this with 4 June contracts, 290, 300. Smile Direct continues to move up. Nice call, Andy. Amazon just sort of bouncing around. Let's go look at some of the new stocks now. We're going to look at Wayfair. We're going to analyze it like we got a hailstorm going on out here. We're going to analyze it like we analyze some of our other stocks. Let's start with FinViz. And let's just put W into FinViz and look at that pop. We're going to find out why in a second. Today was earnings. Yesterday they must have anticipated more losses, so the stock actually jumped but pulled back. Today it it held it. So insiders own about 1% of the stock, but 27% insider transactions. So that 1% stockholders, they did quite a bit of buying and selling recently. Of course, they would have known what their earnings were going to be. Now, their earnings weren't great, but they were better than what the street expected. Here's the number that I'm really looking at, and that's this short float of 36%. They have 95 million shares in total, but only 60% of those are issued. They could issue more shares is what I'm saying here, but I'm not saying that they will. 35% of those are short, which means that if Wayfair continues to drive up, it's going to put those people that are short into a panic situation where they're going to have to buy their way out. It would look like we're going to 214.15. Another thing that we want to check, as we do with all new stocks that we're looking at, is we're looking at TipRanks, tipranks.com. Analysts came out, many of them 4 hours ago. So this was after earnings. Although some of them probably wrote them. When you read these, you can get summaries of the articles here, and you can read the whole article by clicking. Some of them back here, these ones that were saying hold, it's clear that they didn't write those this morning. But these guys probably did. Now, what does Wayfair do? Wayfair buys over stock from retail companies and sells it online at presumably a better price. And what a great place to be in the market right now, because people are shopping online. They're not going into furniture stores, and there's going to be a lot of inventory that companies are going to be overstocked on that should be available to Wayfair for a good price. So they're in a good business place. They have a debt problem, and their earnings, if we take a look at their earnings here, their earnings they've been losing money forever, since they started. But they've done better than what the analysts predicted. And now the analysts are predicting that they'll do even better next quarter. Insiders, you can see that there was an informative sell of the CFO, Michael Fleischer, who bought 20 days ago, just before, I guess, he went into close up in lockdown before the earnings report. And here's one of the 10% owners, a partnership, on an informative sell. They purchased 23 million shares. Let's look at the hedge funds. And when did they do that? They did that 2 months ago. Let's look at the hedge funds. Here's a 5-star hedge fund analyst who increased his holding by 94%. He now has 11 million shares, so that could very well be, that's Kuatu Management. So that's not the same one, but interestingly enough. Anyways, there's a hedge fund. Now, here's 3 hedge funds who have sold out of the stock, but this one's in for $11 million. They don't issue a dividend. I'm not too concerned or interested with what bloggers say or what investors say. I'm more interested in what analysts say. So what would I do with this stock now? I'd like to see a call spread. Maybe a June call spread that has a 215 on it, maybe a 205, 215, which should be fairly expensive, but that's a bit of a stretch. You might want to instead do a June 200 to 210. And that's what I'm going to look at tomorrow. So where